And so from there we'll start text number 1. Okay.
You're gonna explain Phineas.
Pinchas. Okay, I don't know why they have to like have these weird English
How do you
names.
say it?
Pinchas. Yeah. Okay, so text number 1. Okay, I got some readers over here. Go ahead, but yeah.
Moses said to the judges of Israel, each of you kill the men who attach themselves to Baal Peor. A Jewish man came and brought a Midianite woman to his brethren before the eyes of Moses and before the eyes of the entire congregation of the children of Israel, while they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting.
Pinchas.
Pinchas, just spell it funny.
Yeah.
Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the Kohen, saw this, arose from the congregation, and took a spear in his hand. He went after the man into the chamber and drove his spear through both the Jewish man and the woman through her stomach, and the plague ceased from the children of Israel.
Okay, so basically is that the head of the tribe of Shimon, which we read in text number 2, he like basically openly and brazenly went and was with this like a prostitute. I don't know how to explain it. And she was actually a princess, but she allowed herself to like do this just so she can catch the Jewish people, get the Jewish people to sin, just so they could bring down the Jewish people. And Pinchas, who was this grandson of Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, he just took a spear and he like put the spear through the tent and hit them both while they were in the act and killed them. And what happened was a plague that had come because people were sinning, and it stopped the plague and also kind of stopped everybody in the tracks and was, hey, maybe we're doing something wrong here. What?
24,000?
Yeah, well, yeah. So 24,000 people all went like got seduced, all got ran after these women. So basically, what happened was these women, they set up like selling stalls, like a market, right near where the Jews were camped, and people would come to buy stuff and say, "Oh, you want a good deal? Come to the back with me. Maybe I could help you." Once they were in the back, they started, hanky panky, and got the men all aroused, and then got them stuck.
So I'm doing this whole other story. So were these men not married?
Maybe they were married.
Oh, okay.
About that, they were not. Hi, Eileen.
Hi, it's so good to be back.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah. So one thing, if like maybe like people from the end, like the bottom of the tribe, people weren't so learned or so important or so well known, but the prince of the head of the tribe of Shimon was like led this like what do you want to call it? Led this this whole thing, and he was the one that got caught up with this princess, and he not just that, but he brazenly sinned, and he even like teased or taunted Moshe about it. Okay, so that's text number 2. The Talmud explains. No problem. Okay, text number 2. Eileen, you want to read it?
Sure. The tribe of Shimon went to Zimri, the son of Salu, their prince, and said to him, "They're executing our men, and you sit here silently." What did he do? He gathered 24,000 people and went to Cosbi, a Moabite princess. He said to her, "Do my bidding." She replied, "I am the daughter of a king, and my father instructed me to only give myself up to the leader of the Jews." He said to her, "I too am a tribal prince. Moreover, I am greater than Moses, for I am the second son to my father, and he is the third child to his father." He grabbed her by her mane of hair and brought her before Moses. He said to him, "Son of Amram, is this woman permitted to me or forbidden? If you say she's forbidden, who permitted you to marry the daughter of Jethro?"
Okay, so as we know, or if we don't know, Moshe, who was his wife? Zipporah. Zipporah was a daughter of Yisro. Yisro was not, he ended up converting, but wasn't really officially part of the Jewish people. He was actually like a priest of some religion, and he actually was a religion expert. He went and he researched all the religions until he came to the realization that Judaism is the religion. And when Moses had to run away from Egypt and he lived in Midian for 70 years, I think it was, he ended up marrying Yisro's daughter. The whole story behind it, maybe we'll go into it. And so this Shimon, Zimri, who was a head of the tribe of Shimon, he comes to Moshe and says, hey, you know, am I allowed to be with her or not? And if not, well, how can you be married to your wife? You know, she's not from the Jewish people. And so he really taunted her. And he's saying, there, what am I doing? If what I'm doing is wrong, what you're doing is wrong too. So the question is, how could okay, so let's read text number 3. Okay, this is a story of how Moshe met Zipporah.
I have a question, just real quick. It said the people of the tribe of Shimon went to Zimri and they said they are executing our men. Who was executing whose men? The tribes? I'm talking about the text that I just read.
Right.
Who was being executed and why?
I think it means, I'm not 100% sure exactly what.
If you want to look back to the.
I'm looking at a second.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they were being executed because they were not following, that they were all running after these Midianite women or Moabite women, whatever they were. Midianites, right? Moabites, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure they're all so and then he went and joined them to show like, oh, don't be scared, or that's what I think what happened.
So who was it? Hashem that it was executing, or who was executing who?
Good question. Yeah, it doesn't really say. I'm just trying to see.
And was Zipporah a Moabite or a Midian? What was she?
That's a good question. See, Zipporah was from Yisro. Yisro moved to Midian after he used to live in Egypt, and he was one of Paro's like advisors, or
right.
And so I don't know if she was really considered a Midianite, but she lived in Midian. Like that's when Moses.
Right. So she was like born in Egypt.
I'm not sure if she was born in Egypt or she was born in Midian.
Okay.
But he was considered from Midian, so I guess she became a Midianite, but not that her like ancestry was Midianite.
Okay, and who was it? And what people were the Jewish men forbidden? Was it the Moabite or the Midianites? They were forbidden.
The Moabites.
No. Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
Okay.
For interrupting, but there was a lot of questions there about what's going on in that
3.
other pasuk,
Yeah, Anna, read it.
The priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to the well and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's sheep. And the shepherds came and drove them away, and Moses arose and helped them, and he watered their sheep. They came home to their father, Reuel, and he asked, "Why did you hasten to arrive today?" And they replied, "There was an Egyptian man who saved us from the shepherds, and he also drew water for us and watered our sheep."
So just by the way, Yisro had many names. One of them was Reuel.
And he said to his daughters, "And where is he? Summon him and let him eat bread." And Moses consented to remain with the man, and the man gave Moses his daughter, Zipporah, for a wife.
And you have 22 over there?
Oh, and she gave birth to a child, and he called the child Gershom, for he said, "I was a stranger in a foreign land."
Okay, so it doesn't say here is that one of the things that happened was that so right away Yisro realized this was a special man, that he was from Yaakov's family, because he was able to get the well, like help them with the water, with the well. Number 2 is, it says that Yisro had the staff of Adam. It was a very special staff, and it had been passed down. Certain people had it, and then somehow Yisro got it when he was in Egypt, and he took it back with him and he buried it in the ground. But then he couldn't get it out of the ground. Like it was like miraculous, and he couldn't. And he said, anyone who can get the staff out of the ground can marry my daughter, because he knew that the only person that was able to get the staff out of the ground was someone from the Jewish people, someone from Yaakov's family
It was a staff buried.
in his yard somewhere.
So it's like a treasure hunt.
Yeah, so Moshe came and he was able to get it. Yeah. Okay, so if Moshe was able to, was in a strange land and married a, quote unquote stranger of the Jewish people, so what's going on, or is he allowed to marry Zipporah? So let's see what Rashi says on the Talmud. Text number 4. Oh, Dina, Dina's asking a question. How is Ruth able to marry into the Jewish people? Ruth was the grandmother or great grandmother of King David. So yeah, that was one of the issues, Dina, is that many people said they weren't allowed to, and they looked down at Boaz for marrying Ruth, but they didn't realize that it only pertained to men and not to women of Moab. So yeah, okay. Text number 4. Where we at? Sylvia?
Moses married Zipporah before the Torah was given. When the Torah was given, all Jews had the status of Noahide. They all entered the yoke of the commandments, and Zipporah along with them, as well as many converts from the mixed multitudes who joined them when they left Egypt.
Okay, so Rashi on the Talmud is saying that, hey, all Jews weren't really considered Jews until they got the Torah. And once they got so before the Torah was given, they were all considered like B'nai Noach, which means non-Jews, like, okay. Noahites means they follow the laws of Noah. And so once they were given the Torah, they all accepted the Torah, and they all went through this kind of conversion, which we'll discuss in length. And Zipporah was, and not just Zipporah, but other people who had joined the Jewish people out of Egypt, all with the Torah, giving the Torah, all kind of had this converted to Judaism.
I have never ever heard of enter the yoke in Judaism. Usually I hear it like yoke of.
It's a very big concept in Judaism. It's called the Ol Malchus Shemayim, the yoke of our Father in heaven, or Kabbalah, the acceptance of the yoke. Yeah. That we accept the yoke of God. Yes, it's a very big concept.
Okay, I didn't know.
That's okay.
Okay.
Sure. So before the Torah was given, since we weren't Jews, we didn't have the Torah yet, the Jewish people who was even considered a Jew? Was it because you were the child of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? But no, because Avram had a son Ishmael who wasn't a Jew, and Yitzchak had a son Esav who wasn't a Jew. Yaakov, yes, all of his children were Jewish, but were they Jews or were they just descendants of their father, right? So how did one become a Jew before the Torah was given, or was it such a concept of it being Jewish? So here Rashi is saying, yes, we were all Noahites, which means we didn't actually have the Torah, but we all followed the 7 laws of Noah. And so as long as we were, before the Torah was given, you were able to marry anybody, and it wasn't a prohibition. That was okay. So not just Moshe married somebody who wasn't part of Yaakov's family, but Elazar, who was Aaron's son, so he was a Kohen and eventually became a Kohen Gadol, he married Zipporah's sister. And there were other, there's a famous story of Yehuda, whatever. There's different stories where people want to marry, not so many. Most people married within the family, but not everybody. So, which part? When he married Zipporah?
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. The Torah wasn't given yet, so it was all pre. Yeah.
Then they converted.
So that's what it's saying here. That's what we're going to discuss.
You're a Jew now.
Right. So, so why didn't Moshe answer this Zimri? He was saying, "Oh, I can't. You can marry your wife. Why can't I marry this way? Right? If your wife is good enough, then why isn't this woman good enough?" So obviously it wasn't really a question. It was more of a taunt or let me get at you. And but if you really want to answer the questions, you could say, hey, this is already after the Torah was given. This whole story would happen with the tribe of Shimon, or the prince of Shimon, Zimri. He took this Midianite or Moabite girl after the Torah was given. So they already had the prohibition that you're not allowed to marry a non-Jewish woman. And Moshe was from before. So obviously Zimri's question was not taken seriously. But we still we're going to still get to delve into the question today is, what is the real answer to Zimri's question? We're going to discuss a lot of different aspects of it. We're going to go into a few different things. So if the Jewish people weren't considered Jewish before they got the Torah, what was the process that made them Jewish once they got the Torah? So there's a few questions we have here before we go into like the class. Okay. So one is, if all Jews, including Zipporah, were not considered real Jews yet, they were considered Noahites, did they have to convert to Judaism when they received the Torah, or did it automatically come on them when the Torah was given? Number two, so the halakha is, if a couple converts, or if there's a couple and one is Jewish and one is not, and then one of them converts, or then the one who's not Jewish converts, or if there's a man and a woman who both convert together, you have to like go through a chuppah again. They have to go through a marriage ceremony. Okay, so did all the Jewish couples, all the couples after the Torah was given, have to like remarry with the correct, with the chuppah, with the betrothal and the marriage, the two parts of a Jewish wedding? So that's the second question. And the third question is, there's a very, I'm sure most of you know that a Kohen is not allowed to marry a convert. So what was a Kohen? So if all the Jews converted and then they remarried, what if someone was a Kohen? Could he marry his, wife? Could he marry the woman if she's considered now a convert or not? So yeah, kind of confusing. We're gonna ask, but not so confusing. So we're gonna try to go through this. Okay. So the first question we said was, did everyone have to convert after they received the Torah? So in general, if a non-Jew wants to convert, there's a certain process, right? You have to, a man has to go through circumcision. They have to go to the mikvah. You have to, accept upon yourself the mitzvahs. So, so they're all, so let's look at at the desert, did they do this, or was it an exception? Since everyone became Jewish together, did they not have to go through this conversion process? Okay, so it seems that Rashi, which we read before, says Moshe married Zipporah before the Torah was given, and that's okay, before there was any prohibition against it. So it seems like everyone through some type of process, whether they were descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov or not, they had some type of conversion. But if you read Rashi's wording carefully, it says Jews, if you look back at text number, I think it's 4. They all under the yoke of commandments and part along with them, as well as many converts from mixed multitudes. So it says Jews entered the covenant of mitzvahs, and then it says that there are also mixed multitudes and that converted. So seeing like from Rashi, it's really hard to tell if they really had to go through this conversion or not. So we're going to look at text number 5. Okay, good, thank you. So we're going to go to text number 5 to see a more concrete opinion. And text number 5, his name is Rabbi Meir ben Tadros. Okay, and he lived a little bit after the time of Rashi. Okay, text number 5. I'll read about you.
The Torah was given, and the new ban on intermarriage was promulgated. The Torah only banned future intermarriages, but those who were married before the Torah was given were not forbidden to remain married.
Okay, so if you're already married, it was fine. But if you now want to get married and the Torah was already given, you couldn't go marry anyone. It had to be a Jew.
Jews.
But before that, it's like you grandfathered in. You're already married, and you received the Torah, and so you became fully Jewish, and now it was okay. So you didn't need to convert to Judaism to be married to a Jew. They didn't have to get remarried. Okay. And so this text number 5, it also concludes that we conclude that they didn't go through a conversion when the Torah was given. You were just Jewish. If you were there at the beginning of the Torah and you accepted the Torah, you were Jewish. And it was just everyone kind of transitioned, and I hate to use that word, together. So before the Torah was given, you were considered a Noahide, and after the Torah was given, you're considered Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel. Okay, so that is this Rabbi Meir opinion, which is pretty straightforward. Text number 6 is going to. Is she okay? Text number 6 is going to, I think, give a very similar opinion. Eileen, you want to read it?
Sure. Before the Torah was given, the notion of conversion was not applicable because all people were equal, meaning everyone had the status of a Noahide. Thus, conversion didn't apply here. The only change was that the Torah was given.
Okay, so Rabbi Yaakov Emden, he agrees. He's also saying that he's not so long ago, just a few hundred years ago. He agrees that there was no conversion. What? There was no conversion when the Torah was given. Everyone just automatically became Jewish. So, only after the Torah was given, if someone wanted to join the Jewish people, then they had to go through the conversion process. Okay, so since the giving of the Torah was a birth of a nation, it was like a birth, and you're Jewish, it was not a conversion. And now text number 7 is the Ramban, which Nachmanides.
You were born into
It was like you were reborn. You were born. So once you were
I
born.
have a question. The men
Yes.
who married, out of the tribes and, married, considered what were the Jews, I'm trying to think. The people of Israel were from the different tribes. If a man married outside of his tribe from a different people, like Moab or the Midian or whatever other people, if the woman did not agree to following the precepts of the Torah, then what?
So we're talking about now before the Torah was given. So that it was totally okay. There was no precepts for the Torah. There was no Torah, so there's no precepts you had to agree to.
Right.
Well, after the Torah was given, you couldn't just intermarry. You had to convert.
Right.
Okay.
Oh,
Now,
so I see that. Oh, sorry. Well, let's say you believe in multi-gods. So, and you married, you actually had to believe in one God. That there is an exception to this. I mean, a lot of people came in believing multi-gods. They had to not do that anymore.
right, but we're talking about before the Torah was given. So we're like, and we pretty much keep track of who, till the Jews were in Egypt, we know exactly who was of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov's family that stayed within, right, some type of.
No.
Some
okay,
type of
So let me just explain. Let's just say Tzipporah or Yitro, let's say he believed in multi-gods, like many gods, like the Egyptians did.
so you're saying, okay.
So the thing is that she does have to give up the multi-god thing. You sure do. You sure.
No, but okay, so you're saying is if someone wanted to, let's say, join the Jewish people or be whatever, not really the word Jewish, before the Torah was given, there was no Torah, but their way of being Jewish was by believing in one God.
Right. That's
okay.
Yeah.
But she didn't. But Zipporah, when she got married to Moshe, I'm assuming she was already at that point.
Okay,
Her father already came to.
You're missing my point. I'm not using Zipporah as an example. I'm using a person from another concept who says believe in multi-god. Forget about Zipporah, okay? Let's just say just a regular Jewish guy marries an Egyptian woman, okay? and then he takes her out of Egypt. She believes in the moon god, the sun god, the sheep god. Okay, we know that. So she has to stop believing in the moon, sun, and sheep god. Got it? You're not agreeing with me?
I'm not 100% agreeing with you.
Why not? You have to. What, you're going to marry somebody who believes
No,
in the
so
sheep
first of
god?
all, is the people in Egypt, the Jewish people in Egypt,
No,
they
listen.
married. I'm saying something to the people
Okay.
here. They married within the Jewish people.
I
But the
understand.
few people the people who came out of Egypt with the Jews that maybe weren't of Yaakov's family
Yes.
didn't specifically give it up, and that's why we had all these problems. That's why all these problems of
Okay.
the eagle, the red, the what's it called?
Okay.
The
So they did
golden
not.
calf.
Okay.
That's why
Got
a
it.
lot of the different problems were because they still were holding on to their belief of idol
Got it.
worship, and even though they said, okay, yeah, we're going to follow one God, when when push came to shove, they kind of didn't have that same faith or
Okay.
belief, and then they schlepped
Oh, yeah, I believe
other
that.
Jews
Sounds
with them.
correct. Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds right to me.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
so text number 7, Nachmanides Ramban gives a whole different opinion. And I want to read it. Am I screaming? See about you. I'm screaming. Sorry. I just realized.
The sages in France say that everyone had to convert because it was before the Torah was given and they were not yet Jewish. I, however, do not agree. It is my opinion that from the time that Abraham entered the covenant of circumcision, his children were Jewish and distinct from all other nations.
Okay, so Nachmanides says that most Ashkenazic rabbis of his time said that all the Jewish people converted, but he disagrees with them. He says they didn't have to convert. Okay.
They didn't?
Yeah. Okay. The Talmud goes back to this. So the Talmud tries to prove about this conversion or not conversion through the story of this week's parsha, the story of this prince Zimri, and he says that the Jewish people did go through some type of conversion, and as I said before, that there's a idea of circumcision, there's the idea of going to the mikveh, and then I guess in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, they also brought a sacrifice. And that is text number 8a. The Talmud is going to bring down that all the Jews did this before the giving of the Torah. Okay. So you want to read it?
Sure. Rebbe says the offering of a convert is derived from the verse, as you are, so shall the convert be, Numbers 15:15. We understand this to be that, just as your ancestors entered the covenant through circumcision, immersion in a ritual bath, and the sprinkling of blood on the altar, so too do converts today enter the covenant through circumcision, immersion, and the sprinkling of blood, which requires an offering.
Okay. So this Talmud kind of proves that all the Jews at Sinai did go through a conversion, at least according to Talmud. So Rambam, Maimonides kind of like cements this and says, yes, they did have to go through all this. Let's see, how did they go through circumcision, mikvah, and bringing of a sacrifice when they received the Torah, at the time of receiving the Torah? So 8b wants to read, Vespatia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But how did they know to go the circumcision and the mikvah? Like,
So that's what we're gonna read right now in 8b.
Okay.
But circumcision was commanded to Abraham, right? So
Yes,
from that
course.
time, he had all his children and descendants, they all circumcised at 8 days until to point.
Okay.
And then we'll read the other, then we'll read more cases.
Israel entered the covenant with Hashem with these acts: circumcision, immersion, and offering the sacrifice. Circumcision took place in Egypt before the Paschal sacrifice, of which the passage states, "No uncircumcised person shall partake of it, with the exception of the tribe of Levi." Levi. Yeah. The entire nation had until then neglected the covenant of circumcision in Egypt. So Moses, our teacher, circumcised them right before they participated in the sacrifice.
Okay, so that's number one. So they were
that's
supposed to
number
be
one.
circumcised, but in Egypt they stopped And before they had that first Passover lamb, right before they left Egypt, they all went through circumcision. Okay,
The men.
well, not the
I mean,
woman. Yeah, the
Well,
men.
yeah, I mean, like men, boys.
Yeah.
I don't know how he talked them into that.
Well, they knew that they were going to leave Egypt. They got to do all this to leave
They
Egypt.
had to do this. Immersion was performed, where am I?
Mhm.
Yeah, immersion was performed in the desert before the giving of the Torah, as the passage states. Sanctify them today and tomorrow, and have them wash their garments.
Okay, so they were commanded before the Torah was given, you need to wash yourselves up and wash your clothes. And so that was like the mikvah,
Okay.
the well of Miriam. Talk about that last week.
Sacrifices
Or 2
were
weeks ago.
also offered then, as the passage states. And he sent the youth of the children of Israel, and they brought burnt offerings. They offered these sacrifices on behalf of the entire Jewish people.
Okay, so at some point, they all brought an offering. So although there is no mention of specific conversion, we don't see in the Torah, it says all the Jews converted, but they did go through these 3 steps. Okay. And then the next, okay, and although Maimonides doesn't specifically write here that it's about, that this is all to do with conversion, he mentions it in the following I guess paragraph or section that he writes. Okay, so he says, yeah, they all had some type of conversion. So if they all converted, then we're going to go to question 2. And so did all the Jewish people have to remarry? Because were they not married according to Judaism before the Torah was given? Now that they converted, that they have to like go through like a remarriage. So so just to remember the answer to the first question, it seems that they had to go through a conversion. And now is, did they have to remarry? Because now they were Jews and before they weren't. Okay, because before they did not have the, like, the proper Jewish marriage. They didn't have the ksuba and all the other things that you need for a marriage. So we're going to look into this too. So I have a question. If you had a piece of non-kosher meat in your house or in your tent, a nice steak, it's very filet mignon, I don't know, and then the Torah was given, is that meat kosher or not kosher? Are you allowed to eat that meat or not?
No.
Okay.
I assume no, but I'm open-minded.
Okay.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes, what Anna said. It is because everything was converted, so the meat's kosher. I don't know.
Okay, so which one is it? So the same with the marriage. If you were not legally kosherly married before the Torah was given, now the Torah was given, you're okay to be married, or do you have to go through the koshering process for marriage? So that means you have to remarry.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like you don't have to read that, but I'm gonna go with no, but I'm also open-minded.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna, so text 9, and it's just answers right away. So to answer, we're gonna go through an example that the Talmud gives, and there's a positive answer, and the question is about leprosy, right? In the times of the desert and in the old times, if a Jew had leprosy, it meant that they said lashon hara, right? And the Kohen is the only one that could say if it was true leprosy, if they were impure, or if it was not leprosy and they were pure. They had to go through some type of purifying process. So what happened if you had leprosy before the giving of the Torah, and then the Torah was given? Is the status of the leprosy different? Okay, so let's read text number 9. Anyone, Eileen, can you read, or you're out?
Sure,
Okay.
sure. When a person will have in the skin of his flesh a wool white leprous mark or scab in Leviticus 13:2, these laws apply only from this statement forward.
Okay, so before the Torah was given, there was no laws about leprosy that you had to go out of the camp or anything, you had to do anything specific. But after the Torah was given, there was. So if you had leprosy from before the Torah was given, the leprosy that you had on your skin did not count. It wasn't considered tzara, the Hebrew word tzaras. Only if you got a new case of leprosy after the Torah was given, then you had to go through the whole process. Okay, so that leprosy wasn't considered, I want to say unkosher or not good or impure, whatever it is. Okay, now we're going to go through the idea of the meat. Text number, which we brought down before, text number 10. So from the leprosy, it seems that it says here that this proves that things that were forbidden in the Torah only apply to the future. What about the meat? Text number 10. I don't know who we're up to, Anna.
Rabbi Yirmiyah asked, were Jews permitted to eat meat that they brought into Israel that had not been slaughtered according to ritual law? The question cannot be answered and therefore stands.
Okay, so listen, right? Interesting. While the Jews were in the desert, if they wanted meat, they did not have to slaughter it, even after the giving of the Torah. But once they entered the land of Israel, then the laws of slaughter apply. So if you were traveling into Israel right before and they had this meat and it wasn't slaughtered, and I don't know, maybe they made pickled meat. No, but they had a lot of animals with them, so technically they could have killed an animal, maybe made beef jerky or something. I don't know what. And now that they came into the land of Israel, you're only allowed to have meat that's slaughtered. So is that meat that you prepared before you came to Israel okay or not? So I said beef jerky. I don't know, salami.
Okay. Makes no sense.
It's right, but it's there, but still that's how Tom asks all these kinds of questions. They love asking these kind of questions. So the answer it's giving us is they do not give an answer. There's no answer. So we just don't eat it just in case. There's no answer. We're not going to say yes, it's okay. So what's the difference between meat and the leprosy, or between meat and marriage? Kind of good, what's it called? Comparison, meat and marriage.
Meat and marriage, meat and marriage. Go together like a horse.
So it's more confusing.
So I guess the difference is the two, like the marriage is pertaining to the status of the person, whereas the meat is pertaining to the status of the food.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So, but the thing is, we don't see anywhere in the Torah that says the Jews had to get remarried. There's no like big like wedding ceremony, or there was nothing in the Talmud that talks about it.
And who would marry him?
I guess Moses. I don't know who you say no. Okay.
Well, there's only one Moses, and what, 600?
Well, you know what? Many people that lived in the Soviet Union during the time of, during the time of communism, they could not have a kosher wedding because it was illegal. So there were people who did it secretly, but many couples came out of the Soviet Union and they weren't like Jewishly married. They were civilly married. And so, like, I know my mother did it because she ran the organization for Russian immigrants. And they would make these big like weddings and have like 10 chuppahs at once and do a kosher wedding for like 10 couples and just make like a big party and stuff.
So how many requirements is a Jewish?
Well, there's two parts of it. There's something called Irusin and Kedushin. So there's the betrothal, and then there's actual marriage, and then there's like the there's certain blessings to say that. So there's the giving of the ring. There's that, which is like, okay, you are like mine. There's the part that's like saying that, okay, you are to me and like nobody else. And today we do it all in the under the chuppah. But in the old days, it was like the engagement, and then there was the chuppah. And people once somebody was like set aside, or like betrothed, they were like intended for this one person, and it complicated things because they were halfway considered married, and if certain situations came up, it was like they had to get a divorce, or there was a lot of issues that came up. So they made it now that it's all under the chuppah. It's all done at the wedding. So there's a betrothal, which is and that's like the giving of the ring, and then there's the actual blessing of the wedding, like the marriage, and like that concludes with the couple being alone together. Okay. So there is a Rabbi Yosef Rosen, the Ragav Gaon, very famous, brilliant mind who lived in the last century, and he has a whole interesting view. And that's, I'm going to read that 11a. I don't know who we're up to, because I'm reading people up to. Eileen just read. Okay, Sylvia.
The truth is that the status of Abraham's descendants was somewhat indeterminate until the Torah was given. After the Torah was given, they became Jewish retroactively. The proof is that the Talmud, Yevamot 186b, tells us that the mixed multitudes alone had the status of converts. But if all Jews converted at Sinai, did they not have the status of converts? We must therefore deduce that the Jewish people became retroactively Jewish and did not have the status of converts.
Okay, so Rabbi Rose is saying the Jewish people were people who, before the giving of the Torah, weren't considered quite Noahites, like not Jewish at all, but they weren't quite considered 100% Jewish. So they were quasi, they were somewhere in the middle. And so when the Torah was given, they didn't have like a regular conversion. It wasn't this big conversion ceremony, because they weren't coming from a place from zero, from not being Jewish at all to being Jewish, because they were somewhat Jewish. They just had to have like that final, stamp, that final something, of the Torah, giving of the Torah. So, and therefore they did not have to remarry, and we don't see any evidence of remarriage. And so they were just kind of retrospectively Jewish at the time of the original marriage. So now it just all came together and just like finalized everything. So what about Moshe, who was married to someone who was not, considered part of the people of, so he's going to explain it. So they're not fully Jewish, therefore they required conversion. They were not Noahites, therefore they didn't remarry. So it wasn't quite one, it wasn't quite the other. Okay, so now we're going to read. But how about Moshe? Because his wife wasn't originally like from the quasi-Jews, what you want to call them. So why didn't he need to remarry her? Text 11b. Eileen, you want to read?
Sure. Okay. We might suggest that the same applies to the nation of Midian, inasmuch as they also descend from Abraham, and their ancestor was born to Abraham. After Abraham was circumcised, also their mother converted. Therefore, Midianites who converted when the Torah was given were also deemed Jewish retroactively. And this was the status of Zipporah, Moshe's wife.
Okay, so Abraham, after Sarah died, in the Torah, it says that he married a woman named Keturah. And he had, I think, 7 sons or something from Keturah. And one of those sons came on to be the nation of Midian. And since Midian was technically a descendant of Abraham, and then they wanted to be Jewish, they were also kind of considered, since they had the DNA or whatever of Abraham. So they, as long as they accepted it by Mount Sinai, they were also able to be Jewish. They also had accepted, like as Steve said before, the one God and everything. And since Zipporah was one of those.
So then if he had 7 sons to her, then there was no Jewish mother.
Right, but in those days, it didn't go according to the Jewish mother. It went according to the
Okay,
father.
so it's not a Neshama question at this point.
Right, because we said they all weren't quite
Right. That's
Jewish.
what
Right, that whole neshama thing only started once they were given the Torah. Once the Torah was given. Okay, so although the Midianites are not like converted as a whole, not the whole Midianite country or all the other countries that Keturah's children formed, they didn't, only those that were at Sinai and wanted to be part of the Jewish nation, they kind of had that same retroactive or whatever automatic Jewishness once they received the Torah. So that was Zipporah. So now our third question. Our third question is, what about the Kohen? Could he marry a convert if she was a convert, she was converted, or not quite part of the Jewish people, whatever, within all this things we discussed, what does a Kohen do? Could he marry anyone? Could he only marry a certain person? Tzipporah definitely who was not from, Yaakov's children was, part of Minyan, but not really part of the actual Jewish people. And Moshe was considered a Kohen. Anyone know why? How? Because he was the first one when they completed the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. He's the one that set it up and did all the service for the first 7 days. And only after he did that, then Aaron took over. So Moshe was considered a Kohen. And so if he was a Kohen, how could he marry Tzipporah, who was, I want to say, somewhat of a convert, not really from the Jewish people. And if everyone was considered converts, then how could he marry a convert? Right. So could he remarry her? Or could then if he remarries her, gets into problems. Is she converted wife? So the Rebbe says, yes, he was allowed to marry her. Or he didn't need to remarry. They didn't need to marry, but the first marriage was good enough. And why is that? Why was the first marriage of Tzipporah and Moshe, why did they not have to do any remarriage? And then in general, why did not any of the Jewish people have to do a remarriage once the Torah was given? So let's read 12a.
Should I do it?
I guess so.
The Talmud expands on the passage, and a man from the house of Levi went and married a daughter of Levi. He performed an act of marriage. The meaning here is that Amram betrothed his wife with the precise ceremony that we performed after the Torah was given.
Okay, so this passage is from when the Jews were in Egypt, and Paro gave those really cruel laws that the Jewish people have to, be slaves, and they had to throw the boys into the Nile and give the girls up to the Egyptian culture. And Moshe's own parents, Amram, his father, he was like the leader of the Jewish people, or one of the leaders of the Jewish people, and he said, this is crazy, let's all get divorced. We shouldn't have children. We shouldn't continue living together and making more a future generation, because they're doomed. They're just going to either be thrown in the Nile or be subject to slavery their whole life. What's the point? And so he separated from his wife and he told everyone else to do that. But then Miriam, the famous Miriam, Moshe's sister, so she was very young, but she said something to him, like, how you're worse than Paro, because Paro only wants to kill the boys and you're like not letting even girls be born. And then he realized that you can't just give up hope. And then he like made a statement by like remarrying his wife and like making a big ceremony out of it, and re-getting together with his wife and making a whole big ceremony out of it. And this ceremony was actual like ceremony that we have for a Jewish wedding. Okay, before this time, there was no such thing as a wedding ceremony. So if someone wanted to be, quote unquote, married to someone, they just lived together. And if you lived with someone and you lived together long enough in the same house, you were considered married. There was no real like marriage, there was no ceremony, there was no wedding. Yeah, I'm assuming. I think marriage is really a Jewish concept. Started off as a Jewish concept. But till then there was But till then there wasn't. So there was no contract. You got together, you lived with someone, and then like you were okay, you guys, and even till today, if there are two people living together and like within a Jewish community, and everyone knows they live together, there's a certain one of the aspects of marriage is being fulfilled because they're living together for a long time in the open, that everyone knows that they live together. So even if they didn't actually have a marriage ceremony, if they break up, they may have to get a Jewish divorce. It's a question. Okay. Right. Just because they're living together and everyone knows. So that's what I said was the second part of being married is that the couple has to be in a room together alone. So that's the idea, that they're alone together and they're living as husband and wife. Okay. So anyway, so the Rebbe is saying that this passage that says that a man from the house of Levi, meaning Amram, Moshe's father, went and married the daughter of Levi, meaning Moshe's mother, shows that they actually started to perform some mitzvahs of the Torah in Egypt before the Torah was given. And this was one of them, to have a kosher chuppah, to have a Jewish wedding ceremony. 12A, 12, okay. So, so because they had this now, they already had a kosher marriage and they didn't need to make another kosher marriage because they already had that kosher chuppah. So let's read 12B, go for it.
Inasmuch as Jews were betrothed their wives even before the Torah was given, in the precise manner that they would after the Torah was given, there was no requirements for them to remarry their wives after the Torah was given. The previous marriages remain valid.
Okay, so although maybe converted couples today must remarry after the conversion because the previous marriage wasn't a Jewish marriage, it wasn't valid by Jewish law, here the marriages were already valid. They already had the kosher chuppah. And that's why Moshe and all the Jews did not need to renew their marriages or remarry or anything when the Torah was given. And what about the fact about Moshe being a Kohen? So one very interesting Torah law that tells us that a Kohen Gadol, the high priest, cannot marry anyone that was previously married. So a divorcee, a widow, anything. Okay, but let's say he betrothed a widow. So but this was like, he did the Jewish part of, like I said, the wedding, like he betrothed her, but he did not yet consummate the marriage with the second part of the marriage ceremony. And and he was just a regular Kohen. And then while he was betrothed, he became the next Kohen Gadol. He became the next high priest. Is he allowed to marry her now? Or can he not, because now he's a Kohen Gadol and she's a widow? Did you get that?
No, say it again.
Okay, let's say this again. Let's say there's a Kohen.
Yeah.
And a Kohen is allowed to marry a widow. So he betrothed the widow. While he was betrothed to her, but before he actually did the chuppah, the marriage,
Yeah.
he was what's it called? He was what's the word? He was put up to the status of Kohen Gadol.
Oh, okay. So
Could he
Kohen
marry-
Gadol can't- Right.
So could he marry the widow now, or now he has to annul the betrothal?
I would guess he has to annul. But
But you're gonna be wrong.
Are we wrong?
You are wrong.
wow.
So now 12C. Yeah, because he started. Yeah, I'll read it. The Mishnah states, if a priest betroths a widow and was then appointed to be high priest, he may marry her, since the betrothal was performed in a permissible manner. The priest may complete the betrothal and marry the widow. If this is true in a case when only the betrothal was performed in a permissible manner, how much more so in a case where the marriage itself was performed in a permissible manner? Therefore, even after Moses became a priest, a Kohen, he was permitted to remain married to Zipporah with her status as a convert. Since the original marriage was permissible, he was allowed to now stay married to her.
Yeah. That's much more socially acceptable.
So now, why didn't Moshe then answer Zimri? Remember the guy in the beginning who was making all the problems? And he's the one that said, oh, why can I be with this woman if he can be with your woman?
Yeah.
So why did Moshe not respond? So obviously not every single question needs to be answered. Some people are just asking the question just to be troublemakers, which is the case over here. And sometimes people are asking a question just to get you into a fight. Like we were always taught as forever, that if a missionary tries to start asking you questions and tries to challenge you, you just don't even bother answering them, because they're not all they're out there is to try and mix you up and not trying to find the real truth. Okay, so certain people are just asking questions just to make problems, just to make a ruckus, just to get you upset or confused or be on the defensive, and you just have to be smart and just not answer. But obviously, if someone's asking a question, is asking a question that they really want to answer, it's an innocent question. A child in a school. Sometimes as a teacher says, "Oh, you're asking that's a what's it called? That's that question that that doesn't sound. You shouldn't be asking such questions. You should just believe." no, that's not how you're supposed to answer a child. You should try to answer them to the best of your ability. So Moshe, he was called Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, our teacher. He was the ultimate teacher, the ultimate one who gave over everything of the Torah, everything from God to people. So obviously he's a person who would answer questions. And so if he's not answering, that's obvious, because he realizes it's not a question of someone who really wants to know the answer, or someone who's being innocent, or someone who's trying to understand. It was just someone who's trying to challenge him and disrupt, the whole, atmosphere and everything. And also just many times in Jewish history, there's people try to have religious debates. They say, oh, we're going to debate you. As many times the Jews really won, even though they weren't supposed to. But usually these debates aren't really a good thing. I mean, if someone's forced to do it, they should do it. Like in the old days where like, if you wouldn't do it, they would kill you. But in today's day and age, we usually try to stay away from religious debate in general, because there's there's no one gonna be convinced or changed because of the debate. The person who's, the two debatees, whatever the debaters are, just, there to try to, sell their cause. And so that's our lesson for today, is that sometimes questions are not really questions, they're just there to, challenge you or get you upset or try to put you on the defensive. And you have to learn how to weed out which one's like that, and when it's someone who really wants to understand and wants to, grow and everything. I just wanted to end off. I just saw today a very nice little clip of the, oh no, how did I do that? I wanted to end off with, I saw today a clip on Instagram, is that what it's called? Sorry, I always get mixed up with Instacart and Instagram, I'm sorry. Of the Rebbe speaking to someone who just converted.
Oh, wow.
So, this guy. Okay, I don't know how to use this perfectly, so once I want to get the sound out again. Work. Oh, boy, that would help. So if you saw what he said?
Yeah.
He said, okay, I'll read it. Yeah.
Which is the guy that converted, the young guy or the old guy?
Yeah, the young guy.
Yeah.
Okay, he's saying, one second, I'm just trying to, he recently converted to Judaism. The guy just, in an auspicious time, many long and good years. Explain to him that he is more beloved by God than you or me. This is the Rebbe saying this. And you shall love the convert. Good tidings. For you as a convert, oh, thank you. Okay, I don't know, how do I end this? How do I stop this? No.
He looks Jewish.
Okay, there we go.
Doesn't he
Okay,
look
yeah.
Jewish?
That the young guy with the small beard, so he just converted, and the Rebbe says, God loves you more than me. And the guy who's the rabbi who brought him.
Wow.
Yeah.